this is what really confuses me. I'm watching President Joe Biden. He's doing his presidential thing. 6 hours to myself. He's focusing on Ukraine. They are I suppose, are they the sibling state? Are they, je ne sais pas, no, so I don't know what to call them. While I'm here in New York, then it goes to Russia, to Vladimir Putin, President Vladimir Putin, who is celebrating a victorious day for Russia and their win in World War II. And then the news shows me what New York's put on. I have some London in New York takeover. They also, the Grand Marshal put on this gay pride parade. It looks nothing like the serious people from elsewhere. Then they show me just what they're doing with all this, I don't know what, added responsibility on I don't know whose meal ticket. They are then getting on buses for free. They refuse to pay the MTA for rides. They're losing billions of dollars in New York. And then it goes to some other country with a flag that got here in like 1980. And it's 2022. And while there's a London takeover of tourism in Manhattan, oh, you kiddos on Broadway, there are these people who opened a bank somehow and work here and send money home to the places they arrived from. And I don't know how they got here. And who's keeping track of these details. Same city, in some proximity to where I am, there are one of many, many stories of who are these people? And how does one keep oneself safe when you don't even know who they are, the country they come from? Are they like, is there any possibility they might be angry about something? There's a lot of shootings in New York, I'm just saying.
Today, President Biden again making it clear the United States stands with Ukraine.
The cost of the fight is not cheap, but caving to aggression is even more costly. That's why we're staying in this.
He signed the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act, which temporarily waives certain requirements put in place related to lending or leasing defense weapons to Ukraine and other Eastern European countries. It comes as the Pentagon announced another $150 million in security assistance for Ukraine. Earlier, President Biden and allies announcing new sanctions on Russia, promising to cut off imports of Russian oil, sanctioning on Russian state TV networks, and imposing a ban on consulting and other services that support Russia's war. President Vladimir Putin held a Victory Day celebration in Russia's Red.
Look how respectable this is. I mean, they are beautifully dressed. There's pride in one's ancestors, their workmanship, there's participation allowed. I mean, that is how one protects one's freedom, is to have these wonderful community representatives and a day where you all get together and participate in all of the work that you've accomplished. That is something to be proud of. Wait till you see what the London takeover of New York put on in the Grand Marshal terms. In
Red
this
Square,
side.
Commemorating Russia's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II, where he tried to justify invading his neighboring country by falsely telling Russians they were once again fighting Nazis in Ukraine. That propaganda thoroughly rejected by Yuri, a 98-year-old Ukrainian World War II veteran who drove out the Nazis when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Now, he says he wants to live long enough to see Ukraine victorious again. Still...
Again, this word Nazis. Is it the Nazi? Is that the nose? Is that the The Akanazi, is that the Yiddish? This gets confusing. So, like, I'm careful in this. I'm trepidatious on this.
Still, violence in Ukraine continues. Ukrainian authorities releasing this video showing a Russian helicopter exploding over Snake Island, just south of the coastal city of Odessa.
Now that's when there's respect shown and respect expected. Now let's go to where I am. Here's the announcement, same day, of this Times Square takeover. They're using a piece or a portion of the Great Britain flag, except the participants of Great Britain are nowhere to be found.
Well, Times Square is the scene of another British invasion, and we're okay with it. The cast of the Broadway musical Six, originally from London's West End, and London's mayor, Sadiq.
Is that the Moulin Rouge version of Six?
We're at the crossroads of the world to help launch a major new tourism campaign called Let's Do London. It's an effort to attract more international visitors to the city on the other side of the pond.
I'm here in New York, unashamedly banging the drum for London, banging the drum for Americans to come to our great city as tourists, as students, to invest, to do business, and vice versa.
The push for tourists comes as London gets set.
My goodness, look how under 6 foot, or 6 foot under, and then 6 foot over in G over and G under looks. There's clearly a height differential.
Set to mark Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee.
Well, the Islanders have fired
And again, Putin in his victory has this beautiful, respectable parade. This is the announcement that they're making in New York about what the New York City kids are ready to put on. Just so there's a contrast of lifestyles and what has been going on.
Announced for the first time in 3 years, the march returns to a fully in-person event, and the theme, Unapologetically Us. Organizers
Unapologetically us. Now, I'm just curious, is that the update for the US? Is this what they planned before I got here? Because I'm not feeling very victorious.
As I say, among those leading the march will be influencer T.S. Madison, comedian Punky Johnson, and artist Dominique Morgan. The march is on Sunday, June 26th, and you'll be able to watch it right here on Channel 7, ABC 7NY.
And still to come on Eyewitness News first.
There's a clear difference. In the same city that's the parade for this area they're planning on putting on, there's also this headline today about bus fare evasion.
Just a few minutes. Dave and Liz?
All right, Lee, thank you. Well, expect some changes the next time you hop on an MTA bus. Drivers are now being reminded not to open rear and center doors in an effort to stop fare beaters.
You may be surprised to learn the MTA estimates about 1/3 of commuters skip out on paying their fare. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Berger live in Flatbush with more. NJ.
And that's right, Dave. As we're going to show you in a moment, that's how people are evading the fare and getting on the buses is through the center and rear doors. The MTA now estimates, Dave, that 500,000 people are riding the buses of New York City for free every day. That is a loss that is expected to cost the agency $200 million this year.
$200 million, is that something that gets anybody out of bed in the morning? I mean, like, is that where my future dollars went? Has this been going on for a while? There seems to be some accumulation of influx of, who are they? They came from where? And why can't I get to the happy marriage I was destined for this?
So yes, they're hoping a new directive will help stop the bleeding. It happens all day, every day. Wherever there are buses, there are riders who don't pay the fare. Ken Williams drives a bus in Queens.
I think that everybody who needs to get where they need to go should have enough responsibility and enough respect for themselves to be able to pay for that fare.
By their own numbers, the MTA is losing $500,000 every day to fare evasion on buses. Riders are supposed to enter through the front door where the
Who are these fare evaders? Who are these people? How did they get here? And where is this US, this us? Is it only in that theoretical, is that it only in that level of Grand Marshal Parade that they're putting on at Gay Pride? Just curious. How do we defend, like, how does, like, where do you call for help on this one?
is paid. Instead, many riders wait until someone exits through the rear doors. Then they pile on. At times today on the B35, we saw more people entering through the rear of the bus than they did through the front. The driver can activate the rear door using a switch, but the MTA issued this directive, ordering drivers to avoid opening the rear door as a means to prevent people from boarding that way. But union leaders say it sets up a potential for confrontations between drivers and fare beaters.
There's also a parallel here as to how did they get away with keeping my parents and I out of the family tree business that we needed to be in. They let people in the center and rear doors for what?
At a time when assaults on transit workers are rising.
We don't want to get in the middle of trying to collect fares because all that leads to is fights and assaults. And we don't want any assaults on bus operators.
Well, agency officials say enforcement is up. Arrests and summonses have taken place in the last several months. But the rate of fare evasion has more than doubled in just 5 years' time. Much more of that part of the story coming up on Eyewitness News at 6 o'clock tonight. For now, we're live in Flatbush, Brooklyn. NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Thank you, NJ. 2 police officers are recovering.
Here's another story. At the 5 o'clock hour. That was at the 4 o'clock hour.
Tonight, a bright spotlight on a community here in New York, underrepresented in so many ways, including news coverage. The Bangladeshi community, which is thriving and struggling at the same time. Yes, it's a contradiction, but reality for Bangladeshi immigrants, including the ones who started what is now a widely circulated Bangladeshi.
This is New England. How did Bangladesh enter New England? Just curious.
Newspaper. All this is part of an AAN HPI Heritage Month coverage by us. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Stefan.
By us.
Stefan Kim.
That owner and me, we came same time in this country. I think late 80s, all of a sudden everything grew up so fast.
Mohammed Hossein arrived in Jackson Heights before this swath of Queens became what it is today.
These are all Bangladeshi. Sonali Bank is the largest Bangladesh national bank.
The largest bank.
The largest bank, they put money in and then they send it somewhere else. Does regular England allow such I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to say the words of what I'd think that this could be in Homeland Security terms. I am frightened for what they've allowed to go on. Where does help come from to clean up the city? And then it's, oh, they're not hurting anybody. Actually, I'm 43. That's 4 decades sitting in a chair looking for answers because the money that I needed, education and husband I needed, was withheld from my person. And this is going on.
In Bangladesh, first branch in America is right here. Right. He came to this country almost 40 years ago on a 4.5-hour boat ride from the Bahamas to Miami.
Bahamas to Miami is how he entered the country illegally, and then made his way to New England, and then this outcrop opened some kind of cash and dash? I don't know.
His first job paid $2.37 an hour. He worked in retail, drove a cab, eventually got 2 jobs working in hotels. In fact, from the day he arrived in this country, he has always worked 2 jobs at once. But he's been unemployed since before the pandemic.
For me, it's okay because I could support my family back home. Right. I could support my kids, and I could give them the education.
Underneath the story...
How? My father, from northern Italy, came last boat in 1955 to Ellis Island direct from Italy with papers and allowance to be here. But he arrives via Bahamas to Miami to some form of transportation north and settles into New York, but not via Ellis Island. And he's able to give his kids education and whatever else in 40 years. Same 40 years when I arrived. My father wasn't able to do the same for me. And he arrived via Ellis Island. How is that possible in New England? What did we lose and what am I missing?
Struggle is the story of resilience.
Our father and me, we start writing, handwriting, and we did the photocopy.
In 1993, Hossein helped launch the Tikana newspaper with 250,000 readers throughout the New York City tri-state area. It is the most widely circulated Bangladeshi newspaper in North America. On top of readers' minds these days, unemployment.
You use the word survive. What are they surviving from?
So they're surviving from, you could say one of the aspects is racism everywhere. There's a little bit racism everywhere.
Yeah. Soraya Rahman is an immigration attorney.
They might be racism, you say, meaning what exactly? Because for New Englanders, if I go from here to, say, Maine, make a couple stops along the way, what was here before the last 40 years since that boat arrived? It looked a lot like, I don't know, I hear Maine's been able to keep a really tight order. At least that's the going rumor on New York television.
Receiving wages under minimum wage. They might be sharing an apartment with many people just so they can save money and send it back home to their family.
These are all Bangladeshi. I think Bangladeshi is a little more spicy.
But beneath the story of struggle and resilience is also a story of hope and joy. The next generation can keep smiling because of sacrifices made by immigrants like
That whole perverse motion makes me want to vomit.
Hossein. In Queens, Safan Kim, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
The nominations.
They have this on the news as well in a more serious sense. It says National Cathedral will ring funeral bell to mark 1 million U.S. deaths during the corona pandemic. I don't know where this National Cathedral is. I've never even heard of it. Again, when they hold somebody in a room and everything is withheld from them, it gets a little difficult to know the areas, to go sightsee, to go study, to go do recon, and I mean, it's just... But it has a whole bunch of flags, none of which I recognize.
Toll the funeral bell 1,001 times following a virtual prayer service. So some tallies, more than 1 million Americans have now died of COVID-19. The bell tolls are expected to ring for well over an hour. Here in our area, growing concern as cases continue to spike.
Now, like, when you become like a real reporter or broadcaster, journalist, I'm sure they get assignments, they get to learn it. Like, that's a real community drive. That's a real, like, socialistic career. And they get paid for it while they're learning and growing in their wealth of knowledge. I, again, was not offered that career field. I don't know how pathway of entry was supposed to be. Now, I'm not quite sure, like... Is this part of this, like, we don't talk about Bruno, no. I mean, like, my casita, but they painted the Disney movie in some other paintbrush. There's some magical that goes on with the abuela. Again, other people's version of Latina in this pop culture of their takeover. In like some DMX Rough Riders. Their anthem has been clear. Now this is what I got going on in their outcry to this abortion thing, which I can't even cipher out correctly because it's so messy.
Proposing legislation to increase access to reproductive services and guarantee funding for nonprofits and abortion providers. Eyewitness News reporter Lauren
Like, I mean, I'm looking at the messenger and I'm like, I'm a 1 of 1. Lou was a 1 of 1. Lynn was 1 of 10. My children are 4 of 4. I belong to a 4 elsewhere. And I'm his 3. He's my 7, I'm his 8. I'm not quite sure if this is a 4 to 5 message or if this is an 8 to 1 brokered opinion. I can't even tell the difference anymore.
Lauren Glassberg is in the newsroom with details. Lauren?
Do they even use brokered opinions anymore?
And Sandra, part of the plan would also ensure that women from out of New York continue to have access to abortion. In 2019, for example, 9% or 7,000 abortions in New York State were provided to non-New Yorkers. And that number is expected to soar to 32,000 if Roe v. Wade is overturned.
Bans will not stop.
Now, this woman, however, she's inside New York. Like up near Albany. She's upstate New York. I'm downstate New York. I'm just outside the city limits. Just outside Manhattan. She's claiming to be a New York Attorney General. I don't know how or who appoints these things. How her pathway to success was so fluid. And every opportunity I haven't even been offered opportunity.
Abortions. Bans will only stop safe abortions. And that is why we are here today, to provide access to safe abortions.
So does that mean that people have to now pay you to come on the lands to do bounty hunter work? Is that like code for, because This looks like the Sandals Resort problem. I mean, it's fine if it's in the Bahamas, but it starts creeping into New York and getting into places, taking away jobs, family, access to the courts. This is a big problem.
Safe and expanded access. The state attorney general, along with several state lawmakers, are pushing for legislation that would provide financial resources to abortion providers. It is called the Reproductive Freedom and Equity Program.
I didn't allow for any of this. They just took, and I don't know how they get away with running all of this.
This fund will direct money, $50 million, to the Department of Health in order to offer grants to abortion providers and nonprofits that assist people in accessing the abortion care that they need.
For those in need of...
But the people, when you chase those dollars, if somebody actually cares to do the work, which it doesn't really feel like anyone has because nothing's gotten better, are they going to the kids that are trapped, like myself? Or are those dollars going to pay the extortion artists and the hijackers and the terrorists that are under some tourism and leisure and hospitality industry? Like, they hide behind casinos now. I mean, they're right there.
Of an abortion, money could be used for transportation, even childcare. Some funding would go to providers to help them cope with what is anticipated to be a greater demand by women living in states where abortion could be banned.
Because if Roe is overturned, 26 states will ban and or are likely to ban abortion. And 58% of women of reproductive age...
I've never seen this Roe. I'm sure it exists in some quiet meeting somewhere, but I do not know, nor have I ever been given ROE.
40 million women live in those states.
No one should have to travel hundreds, if not thousands, of miles to get an abortion. But if they do, they need to know that New York is here for them.
The Conservative Party chairman in New York, Gerard Cassar, responding today, saying in part that the governor and attorney general of New York have no right to force New Yorkers to pay for abortions for non-New Yorkers. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, where the right to abortion was codified into law in January, a call today by lawmakers and reproductive rights activists to do even more.
We've got to ensure that there is funding for abortion in our state, including allowing our state's reproductive health care fund to cover abortions for people who don't have the pathway to insurance, mainly members of our undocumented communities.
Now, there is also a vote planned for Wednesday in the...
It just feels like somebody thought they were getting some kind of free meal ticket here, and it's like there was like a mass influx. I mean, it doesn't exist. And there are kids like really starving, can't afford themselves, their kids, and have no pathway out or pathway to where they need to be without stepping on all the wrong toes in theories of everything. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxies, broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.